This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 287.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. So recently, I came upon a post on LinkedIn by a gentleman by the name of Nate Broome, and he was advertising a role for an SE director. Now, it's a startup, so I was curious, like, hey, what does it take to be an SE director? So his role is sales, so he's the VP of sales, and I wanted to figure out, how does one get into the VP of sales role? What is it like to be a VP of sales trying to work with SEs? And we talked about a lot of different things related to sales specifically, but also to sales engineering, what he's looking for, how does he make the distinction, why did he look for these things in a sales SE director? So I really enjoyed the conversation. I thought it was useful, at least for me, because I'm always curious about these things. I've worked for larger organizations most of the time. It's just interesting for me. I hope you enjoy it. Let's jump into the show with Nate. Mr. Broome, right?
It's Mr. Broome, yeah, like the sweep with an extra E at the end.
Well, yeah, because I was about to say Mr. Broome, and then I saw the E, and I started thinking, how does that change the name? Yeah. And I guess it doesn't. All right, so
it doesn't at all. Yeah.
All right. Well, Nate, it's good to have you on the show. Welcome. I mentioned earlier, the way we start off is by asking you to introduce yourself, who you are, your journey to get here.
Yeah, it's a lot packed into that. Well, first of all, Ramsey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. I think obviously the community that you serve and support is such a huge part of technology as SaaS. So it's awesome. So Nate Broome, I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales at CaptivateIQ. Who we are is we are a commissions tool. So what we're doing is helping CROs and CFOs, drive productivity by using commissions as a strategic lever, right? And so we've got a unique kind of stance on that from the rest of the market, and we're pretty excited about our technology. I've been in Captivate about 6 weeks now, and so I'm just figuring things out. But prior to that, I spent 6 years at Outreach.io, leading our SMB and leading their SMB and mid-market teams globally.
Nice.
So that's a little bit about my background.
So the personas you've been selling to, it seems like for a majority of your career, or at least a big chunk, it's been other salespeople.
Yeah, that was a big part of Outreach, right? And that was one of the beautiful things, was that I spent 6 years selling to basically myself, or people that were like myself, and CROs and VPs of sales. And so a lot of affinity for that. Now, what's been interesting about the transition is that as the economy has suffered, CFOs became more prevalent in the conversation towards the tail end of my outreach journey. And now that's my persona that I'm selling to the most, which is CFOs and the new gig, right? So I've kind of had some of my my training the last couple years talking to CFOs.
How has that changed the conversation, if at all?
Yeah, I think the different kind of archetypes of the people, right? So sales leaders tend to be more optimistic. They tend to be thinking farther down the runway of, like, how am I going to go do this thing? How am I going to go hit these growth numbers, etc. And they're more, what I would say, I think action-oriented is probably the wrong word, right? But they're more living in that world of, like, go, 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 we've got to do things now, right? The CFOs, it's not that they're not action-oriented, but just they're thinking about the problem statement a little different, right? So they're thinking as a fiduciary, they're thinking about making sure that we can afford the bets, making sure that we actually get return on investment. They tend to be more analytical, right? And so where you can usually sell a CRO on a vision, right, or proof points, you have to sell a CFO with numbers and facts and examples and references, and it's just a different way to sell. But that's usually the two differences.
Is it fair to say, like, CROs are more like offensive player? They want to go out and get stuff. CFOs are more defensive. They don't want to spend, like, they're worried about risk and cost, whereas CROs are more worried about results and profit.
Yeah, I would say that's not quite fair, right? Because I know a ton of CFOs and some are good friends of mine,
Yep.
and they are growth minded, especially those in like startup ecosystems. But they're looking at it a little differently. So I would say that they're both on offense,
Okay.
but they one might be an offensive coordinator in the sense of the CFO, right? Is looking at the entire game plan, all the inputs and outputs. Whereas the CRO might be the quarterback saying, "Put the ball in my hands. I'm going to get on the field and we're going to go run. We're going to go try to score some touchdowns."
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Good way to think about it. I'm looking at your career. You started off as a sales development manager, and you worked your way up to VP and group VP. My question is, why did you even want that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think I think the early part of my career, I carried a bag. I was a seller, President's Club, all the normal things. And then I moved into my first like sales management role, and I was terrible. I failed. I bombed. I was a terrible boss. I was just like, I just wasn't ready for the role. All right. Thankfully, I had some good mentors at that particular company, and they're like, you have something, it's just not where you're at, right? And so they at the time, SDRs had not really existed at that point. So I'm aging myself a little bit, but the SDRs hadn't like existed in its current form. And a new CRO comes in and says, "Hey, we're going to build an SDR team." And like they're like, "Nate, here you go. You go figure this out." And so the first question I had was, "Awesome, I'm not fired. What's an SDR?" Right. And so I went down that journey, and I found a lot of passion in there because I love leading people, I love coaching, I love development, and I think you from a SDR standpoint, like you get all the goodness in there, right? And so I did that for a number of years, different startups. That's how I got into outreach. That was the seat in the rocket ship was through an SDR manager, and built and scaled up that shop. I eventually got to a point of where I was like, "Hey, do I want to be?" It really came to like I had some transformational moments in my personal life, a lot of executive coaching, and a lot of kind of vision casting, if you will, in terms of where do I want to take my family, where do I want to like grow into. And what became really clear was that I need to get back on the closing side of the house, to be able to effectively make the money that I wanted to make and have the influence that I wanted to have. And so outreach, I had the opportunity to move from the SDR shop into a sales manager role at outreach, and then had some great mentors who gave me the space and the runway to thrive and do the thing. And that's how it's kind of how the whole thing unfurled. It's unique in the sense that most people don't make it out of the SDR world into the closing side of the house, but it served my background has served me pretty well in the gigs I've had.
I find SDRs are like the toughest skim people out there.
How about it, man? Yeah, no, it's true, right? You make 100 dials a day, and you're getting rejected for, on a good day, 97 of those, right? And so it's funny. I was actually talking to SDR on like right before this. I was out walking the dog, and I got my wife's out of town. The school calls, or a number, a local area code, local presence number calls. Like I'm the guy right now, right? My wife can't, so like I'm thinking it's the school, or I have to take the call, and I'm like picking the phone up thinking it's the school, and for sure it's an SDR pitching me on something, and I out of karma I took the call for like 5 minutes, let them do their pitch or what have you. But yeah, I love my SDRs. We've got a great SDR shop at CaptivateIQ with some great leaders. So
Yeah, I mean, I joke about it, like SDR, like their job is to get rejected for a living.
that's right. That's right. And what you forget about, it's always funny, you always see these posts on LinkedIn where these CROs or VPs of sales or lifelong sales professionals are blowing up the fact that they got cold called on their cell phone, or that somebody's like super incessant of I can't believe how often this person reaches out. Don't think at the point that I'm not interested, or whatever people say, right? And it always amazes me because if you go and look at their LinkedIn profile, they have people that they lead who are doing the exact same thing, right? And it's like it's so hypocritical.
Well, I can tell you, I never got appreciation for anybody who does cold calls until I went into sales engineering.
Yeah,
Right? Because even as a sales engineer, I come in as the expert.
that's right.
I'm here to help. And then
Mhm.
people look at me and say, like, you're an idiot, right? No, we're not going to buy your product. I'm like, I'm heartbroken. And now
Sure.
imagine getting 100 of those per day. I mean, you might not be as like, I'm an enterprise SE, so I
Yeah.
build relationships. So, it's a little bit different, but okay.
Well, it's in the SDU role is so different in the sense that, like, an SDR is trying to establish credibility,
Yeah.
right? Whereas the SC is the credibility,
I,
right?
I've built in credibility, yeah, just by
Yeah, and so when that gets denied, or that gets doesn't work as intended, yeah, it's a blow for sure, right?
yeah, yeah, that's true. So many questions I got for you right now.
Shoot.
One is, you mentioned you bombed as a manager the first time around.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it someone that told you bombed, or did you feel like you bombed, or did you actually bomb? And
Oh, I bombed. I bombed.
why is that?
I think if I had to like pinpoint it, it was probably like a big sense of imposter syndrome, right? It was I just wasn't confident in my own skin.
Right.
We had this the make of that particular team was interesting. So of the sales company I was in, I was the fourth top seller, right? So I was number four in the company, right? And President's Club and tons of success, all the things. But I was the only one that wanted to be a leader, so I was working towards that, right? And an opportunity came available, and my director of sales at the time, a guy named Joe Hacker, just a great friend of mine, he was like, he had this idea of like, hey, I'm going to build a super team, right? And so he took me, the number four seller, promoted me to manager, and on my team, 1, 2, and 3, right? And so at the time, I was like, oh, this is awesome. I just inherited like the all-star team, right? Like I got the dream team, right? And it's like, we're gonna crush the stack, And what I didn't realize though was that I didn't have credibility with these guys. Like they were my friends for sure, right? But like, what was I gonna actually tell them, right? I was still a young up and comer. These guys were seasoned sales professionals. They had been doing this a lot longer than I had been, and I didn't have anything to offer them. And so not only did I have nothing to offer them from a coaching or development standpoint, that wasn't like that I stole from somebody else, or like I was like kind of guessing my way through, right? I was too heavy on the accountability type of stuff, right? So I was coming down harder, but I was also giving them less. And so it was like, it wasn't a winning transaction for anybody. And slowly but surely, this showed up in our deal execution, our deal strategy, and then all of a sudden these guys just started like kind of collectively, all three of them started struggling for the first time in years. And the only X factor was me. And so I knew it. Like I knew I was the problem, right? Now I maybe had too much pride to like maybe stand up and say that, and I was trying to fight the way through. But a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of painful lessons, learned. But tell you what, I wouldn't have been a good sales leader the second and third time around had I not had that experience.
Did you know you're going to be a good sales leader the second time around? Like
No,
before you did that?
I had a lot of reservations because I was very because I didn't know. Like I was like, man, the last time I did this, like I struggled, right? And so what helped me though was I was very clear on my vision for myself and what I wanted to accomplish. I was like, through a lot of executive coaching and what have you, I got really tight on like, here's why I want to go do this. Here's why this is important to me. Here's what it's going to mean for my family. And like, so I was really clear on, this is very intentional is probably the word I'd use. But then I also was like, I went in super eyes wide open with like, here's the things that I'm great at. Here's my like overwhelming strengths. And here's the things that I suck at or that I've sucked at previously as a sales leader. Right. And I went to my leader, a guy named Mark Costigal, he's a CRO at Catalyst now. And I was like, very honest. It's like, man, I'm going to crush these things, but I need help here. And he was like, sign me up. And, through that partnership and that relationship, I got good at things I sucked at or I was struggling with, because I was open and honest about it. I just went in like almost like a badge of honor, like I suck at these things. I see, teach me. I'm eager to learn, and then then I was able to close those gaps, and director, VP, all the stuff after that.
Like, I love the humility. I love the self-awareness. Most of my bad leaders had no idea they were bad leaders. Right?
It's tough, right? Because I think there's people have an identity, especially sales leaders, right? Like we're like, alphas, type A's typically, right? And, we are taught, whether it's the forecast, whether it's our numbers, our people, we're taught like, just through like maybe social engineering to show no weakness, to show no fear, to show no vulnerability, right? And when you operate like that, then like you don't open up the opportunity to get feedback and to learn and to grow and to act on it and stuff like that. And that's where all the magic happens, right? And so so it's tough that people can't realize and see that. Unfortunately, I think it has more to do with like just how society treats these roles and these positions, right? So yeah.
And so the next time around, not as many sleepless nights?
No, not in the same way, right? I think I was very confident in what I was doing and how I was doing it. I had a lot of reinforcement. I was smart enough to take everybody along for my own journey. And so my boss and my coworkers, like everybody kind of knew that how I was approaching this. And I was like super, like I was like, what I would say is like, I won the PR game, right? Yeah. Like I was in all my one-on-ones, I was like, here's what I'm struggling with, here's what I'm working on. Like in my team one-on-ones, I'm like, hey guys, I'm not good at this, but we're gonna work through this together as a group. Hey, like with my leaders, it's like, hey, this is a developmental opportunity, so I'd love your feedback. And then I would go ask for feedback afterwards, right? And I was just like super, super, super transparent. And so I didn't have as many sleepless nights. Now, what I did have though, that was that I because I was super intentional of making the move, I had I went from a very comfortable situation, top dog in the SDR shop, making tons of money, to tied myself to a way bigger variable in the sales shop. And I got a family to feed, right? And it's like, yes, I had more upside on the money, but I had drastically more downside too, right? And so that was like if anything, that's what really kept the urgency up on those first probably year, 18 months.
More risk, more reward, I guess.
Right. That's right.
Do you still remember that list of the good things, like the things you're good at and the things you're bad at? Is there a couple examples you can share?
Yeah, the couple big ones was I was terrible at connecting with people. Right. And like what I mean by that was I'm naturally a numbers guy. I'm naturally a process guy. I'm naturally a strategy guy. So my mind just goes there, right? Like that's how I think. That's what I want to talk about. That's like my love language. Like that, I get like an affinity if you want to go talk about that stuff. But what I come to realize is that, you genuinely have to put yourself in a position. You have to put yourself in a position to genuinely care about people, right? Like, your sales reps are going to have good days, bad days, and they're emotional beings. That's just who sellers are, right? But like, what's their why? Why are they getting up every morning and grinding? Why are they going to go make 100 phone calls? Like, what are they going to, And so it was like kind of connecting with them on that level was an opportunity for me, and I was able to figure that out the second time around. I think the other one was it has more to do with coaching, kind of showing the how. The second time around, I was a lot more confident in sales tactics and sales process. I had more years under my belt, right? And I had been able to learn more and study more and what have you. So when I got into the situation, even with the number one or two sellers, I had something to give, right? Like I had something that like, that they could actually go and win with, and I can make, meaningful difference in the reps in terms of coaching and strategy. Whereas I just didn't have that confidence like the first time around.
Okay. So you mentioned you overcame the second one, you overcame it by having more experience. The first one, what steps did you take to be more mindful of other people's, or to be able to connect more with people?
Yeah. So I think one, it started with, as probably two things. I was like, one, I did this coaching program. It was called Abundance, a company based out of San Francisco. And I think they're still doing it, still doing this thing in some way. But basically, it was like a half sales leader coaching strategy thing, and then it was half like what I call like kumbaya, get in touch with your inner self, like type of stuff, right? And not necessarily my brand of like learning and development, right? But it serves a purpose. Breathing exercises, all the things, right? And so, anyways, but through that though, one big part of their ethos, or the thing they drive, is how to build community, right? And it was really clear to me is that like I knew a lot of people and I had a lot of connections, but what I didn't have was a community, like a professional community, right? So I didn't have anybody that like I was, I was really connected with in the startup world ecosystem that we're in. And so through that, I just learned how to like, you know, really tune into that part and tune into people. And then that really, tuned into like, what's people's why do they do the thing that they do, like the Simon Sinek stuff. And then, so that was like kind of one. And then number two was, I read the book like multiple times over, was the Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? Like it's a total cliche. It's kind of a cliche at this point. I gotta go read this book, but I'm telling you, like, it's like you give yourself like Jedi mind tricks. And I don't profess to be an expert at like people and connection or anything like that. But what it did was give me tactics and gave me like a framework. It's like, hey, listen, if I'm trying to connect with people, my sellers, my people, and whatnot, like this is a good framework for that.
Well, I can tell you that book helped me a lot because I'm one of those guys who's like, I forget to say good morning.
Yeah, me too.
I
Me
forget
too.
to say hi. I jump on a chat like, hey, did you do this? And then I remember like, maybe I should say hi first. And then I said, oh, by the way, go ahead.
I am the same. Like when I Slack in the morning, I'll be like, like whatever the thing is, and I'm like, oh crap. I just hit this person with like 3 or 4 things. I didn't say hello. I didn't say good morning. I didn't say how was your night. Like, it's like same thing with like the Starbucks barista. You go through the drive-through and like they're just chatting, and then like I'm like, I just want my coffee.
Yeah.
And my wife was like, dude, they just talked to you for 5 minutes and you didn't even acknowledge them. And I'm like, like that's just, yeah, that's just how I am too. It's how I'm hardwired. So you almost have to like be so intentional about it, right? And like keep bringing yourself back to center.
Well, that's what happens. Like I said a message, I said like 5 messages, and then I ended with, oh, by the way, hi. Right? And that seems to work for me.
How do you remember to come back to it? Like how do you remember to come back to that the human connection piece?
I don't know. It's taken a while.
Yeah.
I've always been like this, right? But my wife is, I'm an introvert, right?
Yeah.
I'm very kind of goal oriented, action oriented, just get stuff done. My wife is the opposite, and kind of like what you were saying. Like we get to Starbucks, hey, good morning, coffee black, and my wife would just hit me like, say hi. I was like, oh, hello, and then I kind of practiced it. I've been every morning. And once I mess up the first time in the morning, because I always mess up the first one in the morning, I remember to do it for the rest of the day. I guess I need reminders.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm the exact same way. And what's funny is I'll find that like if I'm in I'm an introvert too. So if I'm in a lot of situations where I had a lot of human interaction and I don't feel like I did well in those interactions, like it sits with me at the end of the day.
For me, I came to the realization that I am good at one-on-one interaction, and I hate like group interaction. Like if I'm sitting in a group, I'm just going to be silent.
Yep.
But as soon as there's one that's to the side, I can go start a conversation. And I think of my behavior is kind of like a credit, like a bank account.
Yeah, yeah.
in the one-on-one conversations, I just add to the bank because I'm good in person. I'm like, hey, how you doing? You know, I'm always empathetic. I try to understand what their problems are, try to help them. And then stuff happens where I have to message someone. Hopefully I have enough credit in the bank so that when I forget to say hello, nothing bad happens. And then I try to put it back in the bank when I say, oh, by the way, hello, ha ha ha. You know, make a joke.
It's that, yeah, the emotional equity, right? That yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm the exact same way. So that's super. It's a struggle, man. It's a struggle, but it's like it's also a better way to live, though.
Yeah, I mean, I take the struggle over other struggles. Honestly, that's like this is one of the best struggles to have.
Yeah.
And, being so I've been moved into sales back in 2021. No longer a sales engineer. But I find being an introvert helps me focus on my job, the things that I have to do. And when I need to turn it on, I can.
Yep.
And I know I can turn it on for a short period of time, and then I have to go do stuff on my own. But it works for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a hard time with the context switching, right? Because like on the things I got to do on my own is the the strategy work and things like that, like where it's like I gotta get into a deck, I gotta go build a deck, and like I can zone in.
Yep.
If I'm doing that and then going to a team meeting and then going back to that and then a one-on-one, things like that, I tend to not do really well context switching throughout the day. And so my old EA, like we were really like, she was really good about this, but like we would stack the right activities on the right days. And so like when it was like kind of grind day, right? Like, and I had a lot of like things to do, like all those things would be stacked up and time boxed. And then when it was like team in person, like it was like, you're working out in the morning, grabbing your coffee, you're getting geared up for the day, and then you're going in to crush these things, right? And it wasn't always possible, but definitely in the days that we were able to thread that, it worked.
For me right now, I have every Monday half day blocked off for strategy work. Every Monday. And then at the end of the month, I have a full day.
Yeah.
And at the end of the quarter, I have a couple of days. And so every Monday for like if I need to work on a deck, I'll try to do it on a Monday. Because I don't struggle with context switching. I think context switching is just hurtful to everybody. I don't think anybody does well with context switching.
Nope.
So it's worked for me. Okay. So you were at Outreach.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, you grew Outreach. Outreach is doing well. Why would you move to another company, to a startup?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I had Outreach was this incredible rocket ship, right? So I joined right around between like 10 and 15 million. I left, we call it, I'm trying to think, I left north of 250, right? Let's just say that, right? And, the company had reinvented itself tons and tons of times. And, I had gotten to a point where I was like, I was kind of hitting I guess what I would say is that, I was ready to go back and build, right? And I was kind of trying on like the fit of like, listen, every day that we went by was another day that I was at the biggest company that I'd ever been at in that type of role, right? And what I was seeing just in my own skill sets was that the farther along we went on the journey, the less and less pattern recognition that I had, right? And so that kind of like planted the seed of like, do I want to continue on this journey of like growth by trial by fire, right? Or do I want to take what I've learned and what I know and my 10,000 hours of talking to CROs and VPs of sales at Outreach, and do I want to go back and build, which is where I usually have a natural more affinity to anyhow, right? Okay. And so ultimately, that's what it came down to was I determined that my outreach team was probably better served with a leader who had a little more experience, scaling past the stage that we were at, right? And then I started talking to the guys. I talked to probably 15 different companies, with some seriousness over a 6 to 9 month period. And I started talking to the founders at CaptivateIQ, and they were telling me about their product and their vision and the team and the challenges and things like that. And I kept talking to my wife through all this whole journey. And I was just like, I got more and more excited about what they were doing and what we are doing at Captivate now, that ultimately my wife's like, you talk more about the excitement here than you do at Outreach, right? And so Captivate was the first company I talked to with any seriousness, and obviously the last one. And so I had probably another 14 conversations in between the beginning and end of like kind of my Captivate recruitment journey. And ultimately it's been awesome. It's been everything I wanted it to be. So, but that's kind of the journey I went through. It was like, hey, am I a good role fit for what I want to do? Is it still matching up with my vision for, you know, my career and what I want to achieve? And ultimately it's like, I wanted to go build. I wanted to lead my own shop. And I wanted to take the knowledge that I had cultivated at Outreach, and then, you know, use that towards another, hopefully, you know, a hot startup, which is what we're building.
So, I mean, you could have built anywhere. What made you keep talking to your wife about Captivate specifically?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of things. Start with the founders. So Conway and Mark and Hubert. First of all, they're all just good humans, right? So a lot of interesting stories popped out about them personally as I was going through the process. So one being when the Silicon Valley Bank situation happened, they floated payroll out of their own bank accounts. It's not a story they tell. But when I talked to one of the investors at Sequoia, it's one of the first stories that guy told me about them. And I was like, okay, that's something different. Like they just did it, right? Because it was the right thing to do for their team. So I really liked the founders. That was awesome. My main partner in crime, our CMO, Katie Foote, she's ex-Drift, ex-Salesforce, and she's just a powerhouse. She's a super dynamic, marketer. And so I was like, this is the person I'm gonna spend the most time with, and I'm gonna have like the most connection with, and we're gonna build this thing together. I was like, do I trust her and what have you? And so that was like a big piece of it, right? It was like, do I have somebody who's going to sidecar with me that I trust and believe in, and I do in Katie. And then, the technology, commissions, the commission space isn't necessarily a category creating type of thing like Outreach was, right? However, it's a technology that nobody has tried to advance in years, right? And so everybody, for the most part, hates their current solution, right? Whether it's a legacy vendor, whether you're using spreadsheets, it's still causing a lot of pain. And the cool thing was that the architecture of CaptivateIQ, something we call Smart Grid, it's built completely different, right? It's not object-based like everything else is. It's a model-based, and so it kind of fits into what FP&A and finance and CFOs already do. And so we had a unique take on the technology. And so all those things, like, hey, is my partner cool? Is the founder, is the founders, great? Is the product, can I sell the product? Is it a unique differentiator? Is the market responding to it? Like those things all mattered. And then the fourth thing was that, can I actually help? Right? Do I have the skill set and the ability based on the problem sets that I'm seeing? And ultimately I believe so. And so it was a kind of the perfect storm for that.
Why do you believe so?
On like, why do I believe I can help?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think with this, our sales team is, and actually kind of how you and I got connected was based on this, right? Is that where we have the opportunity is the market's huge, the TAM is huge. And we largely have grown because of the technology, because of relationships, because of product-led growth, inbound, all those things, right? And now as the market's contracted, we have to be really good at outbounding. We have to be really good at value creation. We have to be really good at sales process and, pipeline reviews and forecasting and like all of these like systematic process things. And like, that's my jam, right? And so when I thought about we were still winning huge deals and huge logos, but without process. Right, we were taking a third of the Fortune, the cloud Fortune 200 are our customers of CaptivateIQs, and if you go look at those sales processes, we effectively white gloved all of them, right? And that's a great thing for us to go do to go win the deals. But where's the repeatability? Where's the predictability? Where's the scale, right? And so like ultimately that's where I come in. And then, you know, how you and I got connected was obviously kind of talking about SCs and pre-sales, what have you. And we're a technical sale. And so there's obviously an opportunity to drive efficiency through our pre-sales team. And so when I saw all these problem statements, my operations back, my strength in operations, my strength in systems and planning and strategy, really played really well into to what is needed to take us to the next level.
Right. And you mentioned you've been on the job for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
What have you been doing these 6 weeks? I imagine a lot of different things, but is there any specific examples of where do you that's the thing. Where do you start when you come into a company like that?
Yeah. So, so I've been, here's where we started. The second week on the job, I flew all my directs to San Francisco. And we effectively looked at the business from every angle we could look at the business. We looked at the data, like, you know, what's happening within our customers. You know, we looked at what's our teams telling us from the engagement survey. We had contracted out a secret shopper. And so what is the experience, you know, like from a secret shopping standpoint, like what our customers like going through the cycles times doing? What was the POV of the executives and the board? What was the POV of each of them as from their inner, you know, departments? What's my point of view from like basically like, you know, outside looking in and having kind of a bird's eye view of everything. And so we looked at this thing like 6 or 7 different ways of like trying to understand what the problem sets were, right? And so we did that transformed into OKRs, right? Where we had, here's the things we're going to anchor on. And then we basically just started and we started knocking out the things. And the things that I'm really proud of that we've done so far is we have introduced weekly pipeline reviews where we're talking on every deal every week. We've rolled out an operating rhythm that gives the team structure and cadence on, hey, here's when we do our training, and here's when we do our deal strategy, and here's when we do our one-on-ones, here's when we do our huddles. And so it's predictable and it's scalable, which has been awesome. We're launching a new pitch deck next week at we're pulling all the sales teams together for an offsite here in my hometown in Seattle, where we're basically going to train everybody on the pitch deck, the new sales process, and then MedPick. And we closed a quarter, right? So this is all the stuff that happened in the last 6.5 weeks or so. And so where I started was, what's our team, our customers, our leadership, and what are we each other saying about the state of sales, right? And then from there, we prioritized the big rocks, and then we just went and started executing, right? And I think our next hurdle is actually SCs, it's pre-sales, right? Is that we have we have a technical sale, and we have some really awesome wow moments in what we can do in pre-sales. But there's a high cost of delivery in terms of time, right? And so we've got to find some efficiencies in there, and that's, you know, ultimately that's what I'm looking for is my next challenge to go solve.
So how many salespeople do you have right now?
We're thin. We're thin. So we've got 8 sellers, and then 8 sellers, and then call it 30 SDRs, give or take. And then we've got 4 SCs who are doing the Lord's work, you know, out there, and which is awesome. And we're super thin. And so, because the idea was that we did the company already made all the hard choices. Like everybody's making a tech where had a huge team, was finding that they were unable to support the big team through leads, through process, through coaching, through scale, all those things. Right. And so they made the cuts prior to my arrival, and then we're at the baseline. And then the goal is, what we're doing here is we're to tighten up all of the infrastructure. We're gonna get our process. We're gonna get our predictability. Like that's the goal for the rest of this year, right? Yeah. And then we scale back up, and then we go, right? But with some actual like structure.
Yeah, I mean, you got me worried initially, because a lot of companies that I talk to that are startups, I have 8 salespeople, I have 30 SDRs, and then I ask them how many SEs, and they say, we're not looking for one right now. And
Yep.
I'm glad to hear that you have 4, because
And we might need double that. I think that's what we're trying to figure out, is that, we have a technical sale, right? And so it's like, because you think about commissions, like there's one, the data is all over the place. Is it coming from an ERP? Is it coming from Salesforce? Is it coming from a different system? Like a CPQ or anything like that. And so, and then you got to marry and match that up with like HR data, like socials and peoples and all the things, right? And then you have like the variants of the comp plans, right? And so it's like, if you and I have stared at comp plans before, and like I've had years where I didn't even bother trying to figure it out because it was so complicated, right?
Yeah.
Exactly right. And so you have all these different things coming in at from a commission standpoint, and it's one of those things that needs to work, right? Because you're talking about people's livelihoods. You're talking about people, like, and it's like you just, and how many times you've had a comp check off. What is your response? Even if it's off by a little bit, it's visceral.
I wouldn't know if I have.
That's it. Like, but let's even go back to, like, even if you wouldn't know, let's go back to what, like, if you even assumed, right? Like, this just directionally doesn't even feel right. Like, it's a visceral response, right? And like, and you're, even if it's a little bit of money, like, you're angry that you might be getting shortchanged for all your hard work. And so people, that's the bar of this technology. And so when we go to technically validated, we've got a high bar, right? Because it's the technology has to work, the integrations have to work. You have to be able to, be able to implement, all sorts of variants of comp plans and flexibility and complexities. But at the end of the day, it has to work because it's humans, it's their livelihood, right? So that's why our pre-sales team is just so vital, because they're the ones like holding on to that objective.
What are you looking for in a sales, an SE leader right now? I think you're looking for an SE leader at this point.
Yeah, I am right now. So, I kind of alluded to this in our previous, thread, but what I want is, I want somebody who, first of all, loves technology, right? Like that's just their jam, right? Like their house is all appled out. They have it's just like, that's just who they are as people, right? It's like they're a technologist, right? Because what technologists, and why that's important, is we sell a technology, we're validating technology, and like, you just kind of have to be inclined to want to geek out about the inner workings of it, right? And that just has to be kind of like who you are. And so that's one, is that I want somebody who just geeks out in technology. That's just who they are. Two is, storytelling is really important, right? And, and technical storytelling is not only really important, but it's really difficult to thread the right needle, right? And so I want somebody who's passionate about that and leveling it up and realizing this, the work is never done, right? We always have to get better. There's always a better way. And so I want somebody who's passionate enough. I think the third, maybe kind of altruistic thing that I want is, I want somebody who, believes that there should be a single owner of the demo process within a SaaS company, whether it's the AEs demoing, whether it's the SCs or solution consultants, the pre-sales team demoing, whether it's even post-sale, like a CX person or account manager demoing. I want somebody to believe like there should be one owner, like one person who develops the click pass, one person who lands the pitches, or like one person who like kind of gets that all pulled together. And I want that person to believe that person should be them, right? Like, it's like, so there's that's a big piece of it.
And to be clear, it's to own it, not to build it. Like, a lot of people can contribute, but one person owns the process. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Because it's like, it's that we have it's like marketing owning the brand, right? There's a consistency to it, right? It's like, it's like whether, and that's the whole deal. It's like, listen, you might not, marketing isn't the only one that, puts logos up anywhere or posts things, right? But the consistency is driven from marketing. And the same thing with the demo is like the demo needs to be consistently driven from this person. And then I think once you get past like that, it's the, have you scaled departments before? Because we are going to grow this thing. We're going to accelerate after we lay the foundation. So have you scaled? have you worked in a scaling startup, somewhere north of from where we're at, a smaller company, 6, 7, 800 customers to multiple thousands? And so have you taken on the journey before? Do you have a track record of developing people, right? Are you a coach, right? Can you develop and breathe life into people? And so maybe it's a unicorn that I'm looking for. Maybe that's the thing, but like, I just want someone who's passionate about the pre-sales, right? Someone who is passionate about it, who wants to own it, who wants to have a seat at the table, who wants to usher this in, because it's me, it's my AEs, it's my CTO, it's my product team. Like, everyone is calling for this person to come in and take this ball and run with it. And that's why I think it's going to be an incredible role once we find this person.
Okay. Last question on this topic. When is it you're looking to hire one? Like, when are they starting?
When is now a good time? So I am currently I don't have anybody in seat, and so we're looking to fill that spot ASAP. I met with the team today, and they're hungry. Like, they have great ideas, and they know there's an opportunity to be more efficient. They know there's an opportunity to improve. And we just gotta give them that, right? We owe that to them, right? And so yeah, ASAP, man. We'll hold out to the right person, but sooner rather than later.
Yes, it's much more expensive to hire the wrong person fast.
How about it?
Hire the slow one.
How about it? That's right.
All right, Nate, we're about to move on to the not so fire round. I just want to pause before we move there and make sure I didn't. Is there a question you were hoping I was going to ask you, which I did not?
No, this has been a good dialogue so far.
Awesome. All right, let's keep it going then. So the not so fire round. Question one. These are the same 4 questions I ask almost every guest, unless I forget, which rarely happens. But what is it that you love about your sales role today?
Yeah. So I think what I love about my sales role today, 6 weeks in a new gig, is it's part of it's the building, but it's the building that leads to the unlocks, right? And I'll give you a good example, right? Is we were doing what we call film review yesterday, right? And my new sales team, they don't know me well. My old team had been with me for years, and so they kind of got used to me and my processes and things like that. And this is the first time we've gotten together and we've call coached, right? Where we actually pulled up calls and gone and talked through it. And I didn't know what to expect, right? And what was awesome was we kept having these aha moments, right? Where it was like, we were like, hey, we should try this thing. And then 3 more people would be like, oh my gosh, I never even thought about that, right? And that's probably the best part about that, is like, it's the system that, like, the processes that lead to these aha moments. And so that's the best part about my job, is being able to watch that stuff kind of unfold in real time.
I'm mentoring a guy at work, and he was complaining about a customer not buying. And then I asked him, like, what happens if they don't buy? Like, from the customer's perspective, it's like, I never even thought to ask that question. Just like 2 people talking can lead to aha moments. Watching tape, like, that's what they do in any sport.
It's all, yeah, and that's what's bonkers. And that's one of the things I try to bring to Captivate is, listen, like, if you look at any high functioning organization, team, sports, whatever you want to use as your reference point, what do? They spend time to strategize, right? They spend time reviewing past situations and past mistakes and past learnings and past wins, right? They've spent time preparing, right? There's some basic things that all top organizations do. And for whatever reasons, we get into sales and most organizations just freaking wing it. Like, I see it. I saw it outreach time and time again, is that we would parachute in on these deals or our customers, and these were seasoned CROs, seasoned VPs of sales, and they're like, "Hey, Nate, we don't know what's wrong with our organization. I need some help. Can you give me some guidance? What have you?" And you jump into these situations. It's like, I'll tell you what's wrong. Like, your people are hopping on the biggest deals in their pipeline, and they haven't talked to anybody about it. Like, they didn't prepare with anybody. Like, that's what's wrong. Like, you didn't give this 2-year veteran of a seller any framework to, like, go into these calls with.
Well, here's the bigger problem. This is specifically for sales engineers. Now,
Yep.
The sales team, I think of it as the athletes of the business world, right? There are like, if you talk to a software engineer, they're doing software all day, they're coding, that's their job.
Yep.
You're talking to sales and sales engineers, specifically sales engineers. We're doing a demo for a half hour here. We're doing a discovery call there. We're doing a proof of concept here. We're all over the place. It's like being a basketball player. We shoot, we dribble, we pass. There are way too many skills.
Triple threat. Yep.
Yeah, the difference is basketball players, they like people in the NBA, they probably started playing when they were 4 or 5 years old.
Yep.
They went through the high school, they went through NCAA, they were rookies, they weren't let on the field or the court, and then they started playing and seeing time. For sales engineers, they haven't done sales engineering in their entire life. And now they're hired as a sales engineer, and they're given like a 2-week training, and they say, go sell.
Yep.
And then they're never told. They're never, their videos are never reviewed. They're not generally coached very well. And it took me the whole reason I started WDSEs is because it took me a year and a half to understand that I don't know what discovery means.
Sure. Yeah. It's
yeah.
It's a travesty. It's a travesty, right? It's like there's this because it's so true, and part of this was all facilitated. I think all of our hens are coming back to roost a little bit because like all the VC money and tech, what have you, was just like hire, grow at all costs. And so you basically just would like, bring in small armies and churn out like, if you didn't succeed, it was because of you, not because of us. And you would just keep going through this cycle, right? And people almost succeeded despite the circumstance, not because of the circumstance. Yeah. I think about, maybe use your sports analogy and basketball analogy a step further, is if we think about the sales process, especially one where pre-sales is prevalent. What is a typical process? A typical process is going to be, there's an AE-led discovery call. There might be an AE-led demo, but then there's probably going to be a technical validation thing where the pre-sales team comes in at that third call, maybe the second call, right? And what we've done from a generational seller standpoint is we're just like, hey, go figure your thing out. Don't practice, just get to the next call, right? And that's all we've been banging the drum on. But the best shooters in basketball will tell you that if you got to catch it, you got to catch the ball in the pocket, right? It's like and so like the best point guards will tell you, the Steph Currys of the world, Chris Paul's of the world will tell you that like, hey, every shooter wants to catch the ball in a certain spot, which then will allow them to release in a certain spot. And that's the same thing for SCs, is we got to put the ball or the deal or the opportunity in the pocket so you guys can go be great. Right. And other than like, hey, here's this crap sandwich, please make it work so that I can get credit on winning the deal.
Well, okay, so we're gonna dig deep into this, because everything you said, I agree with 100%. What you mentioned were, well, what I think of as like the front end process, what the customer sees, right? But there's no one teaches that to any SE, but there's so many things that happens in the back end. You mentioned earlier preparing for a call with a customer. There's also like, how do SEs get involved with marketing? What is their role with qualification? How do they say no to their salesperson who's bringing them into a customer that's not qualified, or that's not even the right customer, who would never buy from them? What's the RFP process? Do we respond? Do we not respond? These are all things that SEs have to figure out on their own, from what I've seen. And I'm going to end the rant here, unless you want to continue on.
No, I'm to preach, man. It's wild, because like there's just this. What I think it is that I think that there's not a lot of CROs, VPs of sales out there that were pre-sales engineers themselves. Yep. So there's a fundamental, like me included, right? I wasn't either. But there's a fundamental misalignment with that. Like they've never walked a mile in the shoes, right? And I feel the same way too on technology, where it's like, I feel like it's really hard for me to learn technology. I feel like it's really hard for me to like, even consume all the things you need to know about a product, just so you can, show up at a call. And because most sales leaders have never done that before and never sat in those shoes, it's always, I think they neglect it the most, right? They actually neglect pre-sales the most, I think. which then facilitates everything that you're talking about, right?
Yeah. In salespeople's defense, every sales engineer think they're better at sales than their salesperson until they try it.
Yeah, I have funny story, and hopefully none of my outreachers are listening to this. So we did this the sales kickoff, right? And we did a pitch competition. So we rolled a new pitch and everyone practiced it and like that. And we gave away like, a couple $1,000. I mean, it was really fun, right? And I got to be one of the judges. And so I probably listened to like 50 pitches, like just boom, boom, boom. And you know who had the best pitches? Not AEs. Sales engineers.
Yeah.
Every single one of them, pound for pound, came back with a better pitch than the AEs.
Yeah. So I think SEs are great at certain aspects, but they don't see what AEs go through behind the scenes, right? The AEs see what the SEs do and the front end process, customer facing, and the SEs see what the salespeople do at the customer facing. But when SEs are involved, the AEs aren't really doing much. They're there to facilitate, right? Like that's their job. And then when the SE is gone, that's where the salesperson is busy doing the work. But the SE doesn't see that. So I can do their job better than they can until they try it. Like, because I did it a while back and I hated it and went away, came back. Anyways. But yeah, I think I think we should switch SEs and AEs for like a month. And maybe
you have to go do the thing, and then. But the problem with that though is then you have a bunch of AEs who think that they can demo without SEs, and then so the AEs will go like, "Oh, I know how to do this," right? And that actually misses the whole point of the SEs because I think there's like two things where it's like one is that the SE's job is to stay on top of the technology, right, and to stay up to date on everything, nuances like, and that could be almost a part-time job in itself, depending on the velocity of your company and how much technology you're putting out there. So one, you got to have the time, the space to be able to do that and to learn. Yeah. But then the second thing though is that we talked about this at the beginning of the call. It's the credibility thing, right? Where SCs come in and pre-sales teams come in and they're wearing a different uniform or almost, right? Where it's like, an AE could say something and then a pre-sales, engineer could say something and it could be the exact same words verbatim. And that prospect is going to hear that statement differently.
Well, yeah, it's like me telling my wife, you don't need to do this exercise. And she's like, and then someone else tells her this exact same thing. She's like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." Like, I said that.
You can't bring the sales coaching into the home, man. That's a disaster.
For salespeople, I've had conversations with salespeople where I tell them like, "Hey, SEs are great at doing demos." Where I tell them, we have to practice alone, or they have their own capability, and nothing worked until I said, "You have the chance. You have the time to prepare for a demo or find another deal. Which would you prefer to do?" And it's like, "Oh, find another deal." Like, cool, go find another deal, delegate, right? You might be doing the demo better, but then the SE will do a very good job for you anyways. And that seems to work with a lot of salespeople. What's in it for me kind of question.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Question number 2. See, that's why I call it the not so fire round, because I think we spent 10 minutes on the first question. And
I'll be concise in this one.
Oh, actually, I don't want you to, but I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time. It's at the top of the hour. Are you still good to keep going?
I could hang on for a few more minutes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Question number 2 is we talked earlier about something that you weren't very good at, which was like connecting with people. If you were to think today about yourself, what would you say is your superpower?
Yeah, I think so my superpower is being able to take strategy and put frameworks and operations around it. All right. And so if I think about like, sales process or the sale, I'm one of those unique sales leaders in the fact that I don't actually love the sale. Right. Like, and you always hear people like, "Oh, I love being on the calls and I love negotiating and things like that." And I don't dislike it. Right. But I don't love it. Right. But what I do love and I have passion for is everything else around it, right? I love the process. I love the infrastructure. I love putting people in the right spots. And then in my vision, a great sales organization is one where we take the buyer's journey and we run them through an ultra efficient process where all of the sellers and solution engineers, everyone's in the right spot to thrive, right? And so so that's what I think, that's what that's what I know my gifts are.
Nice. I like that. Yeah, I love the sale. Okay. Question number 3. For your new sales engineer director,
Yep.
what is the one book you would ask them to read first?
Ooh, that's a good one. The one I'm thinking of is a little broy, and so I want to preface the one that like popped in my head right away, because I'm sure there's a bunch of other better books, but this is the one that is just hit me. So there's the book Extreme Ownership, right? And so it's heavily. So I just want to preface this for my, for the female, sales engineers that are listening to this, right? It's a little broy, but the concept remains. Is the whole concept of the Extreme Ownership book is that you own everything that like your department, your team thing touches, right? And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to like basically ensure that your house is in order, and you're helping other people ensure their house is in order, whether those are your peers on the sales or post-sales side, right? And so I think the meta point of that book is super relevant for this role. Is somebody who is an owner, is a builder, and who doesn't just like operate in a silo, but operates in a team collaborative approach, and wants to make the entire process better, even the ones that maybe their names aren't directly attached to.
Well, these are the most important ones.
Yeah,
I find I love that book, by the way.
I do too. It's a great book, and I've read them all. I've seen Jocko live, and it's yeah, but it is a little on the bro side. So I just want to, it is for sure.
Okay. I never thought about it that way. Now that you say it, maybe it's obvious. All right. The last question of the not so fire round, Nate. What habit are you working on today to improve in your personal or professional life?
Ooh, yeah, the big one that I'm working on right now is I'd probably frame it up as like compartmentalization. But what I really mean by that is my new role. I'm at home exclusively now, right? And so I'm 5 days a week. I don't go to the office anymore like I did in my last role. So I've got a family, I've got kids, and so I literally am 50 feet away from them. And so my decompression time from the end of my workday to my family is all of like 30 seconds. And so the thing that I'm working on, that I'm trying to get to, is allow myself good days, bad days, whatever, is to settle in. And then by the time I get to my family at 5, 6, 7 o'clock, whatever time it is, like I'm there, I'm engaged, and I'm focused. And because I don't have like a drive anymore to like decompress, and I don't have like some built-in, I'm just gonna listen to some good music, grab a coffee on the way home. Like none of that's there anymore. And so that's probably the thing I'm working on the most right now.
Good luck. I've been trying that for many years now. Because
hard. It's hard. Like and especially if you're like, as my significant, my wife, she's not in tech, she doesn't understand this world and this ecosystem, and the stress or like the things that we care about that no one else cares about, and as much as I've tried to take her on that journey, she'll just never get there, right? And how could she, right? She's never, but like, so kids expect dad. They don't care if you had a bad day, if you missed your quarter, like dad's home, right? So
right. And sometimes it's the best thing. Nate, I appreciate your time. And if people want to connect with you, I'm gonna leave a link to the job posting on the show notes. But if they want to connect with you, where can they do that?
Yeah, so I am on LinkedIn, so you can message me there and email me there if you're interested in anything I can help with. Obviously, we're actively hiring for the director of solution engineering role right now. And my email is Nathan Broome Broome at CaptivateIQ.com, and referrals and resumes welcome. This is a critical tier 1 can't miss hire, and we're gonna treat it as such.
Okay. I'll leave I guess I'll leave your email on the show notes if you want. Let me if you want me to take it out later, let me know. Nate, again.
That's all right. It's already in Zoom info and Lead IQ. Everyone's already got it. So that's all part of it.
Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Awesome. Good being here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And that brings us to the end of the show. And I have to admit, I never thought I would hear a senior VP of sales say that he's an introvert. Just never crossed my mind. How could someone be that? Well, it seems that there are multiple ways to get into the same role. And someone can be analytical and just good at what they do. And some people are just outgoing and are able to garner influence in that sense and be good at what they do. So that part was very interesting, and it was nice to see there's a lot of commonalities between me and Nate. So Nate, thank you for being here. And for you listening, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you took something from it. And if you're looking for an SE role at a startup, and SE director role at a startup, now you know what it needs, what at least Nate needs. And I'm leaving a link to the job posting in the show notes, WeTheSalesEngineers.com/show 287. Check it out there if you're interested. And connect with Nate, tell him that I sent you. With that, I'm signing off.